preaching here in this community for a goodly number of years, and within the context and confines of the four walls of the church where I preach and wherever else people will let me speak. But it kind of goes in one ear and goes out another. And let me also address this, because I'm sure your listeners may be concerned about why would a pastor speak as I'm speaking. I think that you need to know that I will never get up and speak unless the Lord speaks to me. And even though the language that I've used, such as the language of a bastard or trash or whoring, all those are biblical terms. Now, most people who are looking to stay popular and want to be able to get money, want to keep people happy, because when they're happy or they don't feel challenged in that way, they'll give you money. But I've never said anything about any of these people that is not biblical or cannot be found in a biblical root. And when they talk about Jesus, so these churches are following people like Billy Graham, made Jesus some little sissy tiptoeing through the tulips that has never said anything strong to anybody. It was Jesus, you remember, that took the rope and beat those religious people out of the temple. It was Jesus that called them a bunch of hypocrites and a whited sepulchre, and it was his cousin, John the Baptizer, that called them a bunch of snakes and vipers. So my language is mild. We got to stop telling people and misleading people about the verses and about the Bible, and especially the New Testament. And it was David that took the sword and cut off the head of Goliath, and that's what I plan to do with Barack Hussein Obama and all these others as well. It needs to be public, and everybody needs to have full information about the process.
Well, I really appreciate it. I mean, it's just more questions come up as we talk to you, because it's a lot of things people want to know about Reverend James David Manning. One thing I'm sure people buzzing, why did you go to jail? What did you go to prison for?
That's a good question too.
Oh yeah, very good question.
I had a first class job. One of the best you'll ever get for a young man of my age, working as a marketing executive with Procter & Gamble Corporation. Had a company car. I mean, I was living. I had a great opportunity. But I had no animosity in me for white people that began to build. But over a course of time, I began to hear the rhetoric of the teachers and preachers, Nick and Rap Brown and the Black Panthers and Fred Hampton and Huey Newton. I've been listening to that stuff, and I began to hate white folks. I quit that perfectly great job with a great income and the greatest future any black man could have had, I suppose, with a major international corporation, and began to vent my distaste for the Americans' way whites and blacks were interacting with one another. And I began to rob white people's houses. Never took anything from a black person, never. I began to break in houses in Miami Beach and out in the exclusive areas in and around New York City. Got caught, went to jail. That's what happened to me.
Right. And who brought you to Christ? Under who ministry did you come to Christ?
My grandmother. She wasn't there. I knelt down in prison while I was there and asked the Lord to, here's what I did. I was married. I started running around on my wife, smoking marijuana, taking pills, taking acid, and all that kind of stuff. And I run around with other women and just destroyed my family. I mean, I just did. And when I ended up in jail, I made it really rough for my children and my wife at the time. She since divorced me, that woman. But I just made it very bad for did, and there was no reason for me to do that, to put that on my children like that. And when I was in that jail, I didn't want to get out. I just wanted the Lord to take that pain off of me, of what I did to my children and my wife at the time, and how I embarrassed my family. And I mean, everybody knew I went to jail. All my classmates, everybody in the town, my mom and dad, and everybody knew. All I wanted was for the Lord to take that pain off of me, of how I'd hurt so many people. And I asked him to come into my life one night, and he forgave me. And I'll tell you, my friend, the power of God hit my life, and that was back in 1976. And I've been a changed man ever since. But it was really my grandmama's teaching about the church and about Jesus that really told me what to do and how to do it.
Okay. Dr. James Mannings, thanks for taking our time. You preached a sermon on confessing your jealousy on March the 10th. Can you tell us the basis of what was your jealousy about?
The Bible says God is a jealous God. He's not jealous in as much as that he feels inferior to anybody, or that, someone's got the one hand up on him. That's never God's position, never will be. My jealousy for black people is that they're not hearing the truth, and God, they're suffering so bad. We are worse today than we were a generation and 2 generations ago, as I just outlined a few moments ago, under the leadership of Jackson and Clinton and Sharpton as a trio. We have the worst. We've imprisoned more men, and don't forget about, we have imprisoned more men, our family structure, our economic base of our community. You know what it's like to have a 1.2 million men from across America out of a group of only about 32 million all total. Then you got 1 million of that 32 million in prison. Economically, how that affects the entire black nation. I mean, it is devastating. And then what it does morally and socially to our children. And most of these men that are in prison have at least 1 to 3 children. I mean, this is a Holocaust going on here in America, and Barack doesn't care anything about that. Not saying it, and if he began to talk about black issues the way I'm talking about black issues, those white folk in Iowa would not vote for him. Those white folk in Colorado wouldn't vote for him, and you wouldn't know who he is, because once you begin to champion black causes in a real way, white folk are not going to support you. He is a great big puppet pimping black folk. He's pimping them for their votes, but he can't talk about black issues. He can't talk about it. When Jesse tried to talk about them, as weak as they were, they wouldn't hear him. When Sharpton tried to talk about it, Barack is pimping black people all the way to the nomination, but he's never going to be able to help them. He can't talk about black issues now. He can't help him even if he became president, because white folk ain't going to stand it. So black folk, y'all are being pimped, and you don't even care.
James Mannings, whether we disagree, which and I got to admit, some of the things you said today was different than I seen on the video that I agree with, and I got to say it on record, half of it. Some other half of the stuff you said was way. Some other half of the stuff you said, I don't know. You might be the only person in America thinking that way, Doctor. But but I'm sure you got your reasons for what you think. Barack Obama did write one of the best racial profiling bills in America. No other legislator have done that, and that was to help the black folks who was getting pulled over. While you mentioned driving while black, it was Barack Obama who addressed that in Illinois. He addressed it also the death penalty reform in Illinois. So, and perhaps he is not talking about a lot of the black issues right now, and I agree with you on that. But to compare, and to say that he's going to be worse than George Bush right now.
Excuse me?
You said his presidency worse than George Bush?
Well, I think that if you look at Bush is primarily a failure because of the war in Iraq, and I've got a lot to say about that. I'm sure you don't have enough time to hear now. I've got another up shortly myself that I'm going to take. But the issue of the war in Iraq, coupled with the Clinton scandals, have left a bad taste in America's mouth over the last 16 years. I mean, it's just an awful thing that has happened. And so anybody who looks to be a diversion from both Clinton and Bush seems to be a breath of fresh air. But, we really have to pray about whether or not those who are trying to occupy that place should indeed occupy it, and whether or not we need a breath of fresh air. I think Rumsfeld more than Bush needs to be beaten up because of the wall. And Bush should have been a stronger leader with Rumsfeld. Rumsfeld wouldn't do what Bush wanted him to do. He wouldn't do what Colin Powell suggested. If Bush had listened to Colin Powell, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in Iraq now. That's Rumsfeld's war, but Bush is catching all the bad press about it. But Barack is not the solution. He is not. He's pimping black people. We need to know that. He is pimping us, and we're never going to get anything out of Barack. So, we need to look critically at this and pray about it, and God will show us how to come about this without having Barack as our leader.
James Mannings, Dr. James Mannings in New York, thanks for your time here today. May God bless you.
Thank you so much for having me. And may the Lord bless you and prosper your program out there. And I pray that God will prosper all your people, especially since we're in the midst of this recession. And tell all those people out there that the people are saying that we're in a recession or there's a possibility of one. We're in a depression. Watch your money and watch how you spend, and try to keep your jobs and try to keep your homes. And I'm praying that people will not, especially black folk, but all people will not suffer greatly. But we're in the midst of a depression, and it's only going to get worse. But God bless you, sir.
Take care.
Take care.
All right, there you go, James Mannings.